A quiet hospital room, the soft hum of machines, and the gentle cries of newborn twins filling the air. It's a moment that should be pure joy, a celebration of life, of family, of new beginnings. But for one couple, what started as the happiest day of their lives quickly turned into a nightmare they never saw coming. This is the story of a DNA test that unraveled a shocking secret, a secret so explosive that it sent a seasoned doctor into a panic, reaching for the phone to call 911. What could possibly go so wrong in those first few hours of life? What could a simple DNA test reveal that would make a medical professional react with such urgency? This isn't just a story about science or medicine. It's a story about love, trust, and the unthinkable twist life can throw at us when we least expect it. Meet Sarah and Michael, a young couple who had been dreaming of this day for months. Sarah had carried the twins through a challenging pregnancy, and Michael had been by her side every step of the way. They were over the moon when they finally held their babies in their arms, two perfect little bundles of joy. But as the hours passed, something felt off. The nurses kept exchanging glances, the doctor seemed unusually tense, and the atmosphere in the room grew heavier by the minute. Sarah, still groggy from the delivery, noticed the change but couldn't quite put her finger on it. Michael, ever the optimist, tried to reassure her. "It's probably just routine," he said, squeezing her hand. But deep down, even he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Then came the DNA test. It was supposed to be a formality, a standard procedure to confirm the baby's health and parentage. But when the results came back, the doctor's face turned pale. He excused himself from the room, muttering something about needing to make a call. Sarah and Michael exchanged worried glances. What could the test have revealed? Was there something wrong with the babies? Were they sick? The questions swirled in their minds, but before they could even process what was happening, they heard the doctor's voice in the hallway, urgent, frantic. "I need you to send someone right away," he said. "This is an emergency." An emergency? What kind of emergency could involve two newborns? Sarah's heart raced as she clutched her babies tighter. Michael stood up, his protective instincts kicking in. "What's going on?" he demanded, stepping toward the door. But the doctor was already gone, leaving them in a suffocating silence. The minutes felt like hours as they waited, their minds racing with possibilities. Was it a mix-up? At the hospital? A rare genetic condition? Or something even more unimaginable? The tension in the room was unbearable, and just when they thought they couldn't take it anymore, they heard the sound of sirens in the distance. Sirens, coming closer, to their hospital room. What happened next would change their lives forever. But to understand how they got here, we need to rewind a bit, back to the beginning, back to the day Sarah and Michael first found out they were expecting twins. It was a journey filled with hope, excitement, and a few unexpected bumps along the way. Little did they know, those bumps were just the beginning of a much larger story. A story that would challenge everything they thought they knew about family, identity, and the bonds that tie us together. So, what did the DNA test reveal? Why did the doctor call 911? And what does this mean for Sarah, Michael, and their newborn twins? The answers are coming, but for now, all we can do is wait and wonder. Because sometimes, the truth is stranger than anything we could ever imagine. Sarah and Michael's journey to parenthood hadn't been an easy one. Like many couples, they had faced their share of challenges. After 2 years of trying to conceive, they had almost given up hope. But then, one ordinary Tuesday morning, Sarah took a pregnancy test, and the 2 pink lines appeared. They were overjoyed, their dreams of starting a family finally within reach. The first ultrasound brought even more excitement. Twins? 2 heartbeats, 2 little lives growing inside her. Sarah and Michael laughed, cried, and immediately started planning for their double bundle of joy. They painted the nursery in soft pastels, bought matching onesies, and even picked out names, Emma and Noah. Everything felt perfect, like the universe had finally decided to give them a break. But as the months went by, Sarah couldn't shake a nagging feeling that something was off. Her pregnancy was more difficult than she had expected. The morning sickness was relentless, and she was constantly exhausted. Her doctor assured her it was normal, especially with twins, But Sarah couldn't help but feel like there was more to it. She tried to push the worries aside, focusing on the excitement of meeting her babies. Michael, ever the rock, did his best to keep her spirits up. "We're in this together," he'd say, rubbing her back after a long day. "Soon, we'll have two little miracles to show for all of this." The day of the delivery arrived, and despite the challenges, Sarah was determined to bring her babies into the world safely. The labor was long and grueling, but when she finally heard the first cries of her newborns, it all felt worth it. Emma and Noah were here, and they were perfect. Sarah and Michael held them close, marveling at their tiny fingers and toes. For a brief moment, everything was right in the world. But that moment didn't last long. As the nurses cleaned and checked the babies, Sarah noticed something strange. One of the nurses kept looking back and forth between the twins, her brow furrowed. She whispered something to another nurse, who quickly left the room. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. The nurse forced a smile. "Everything's fine," she said, but her tone didn't match her words. Sarah looked at Michael, who was still beaming with pride, oblivious to the tension in the room. She wanted to believe the nurse, but something deep inside told her not to. The doctor returned a short while later, his expression unreadable. "We're going to run a few standard tests," he explained, his voice calm but firm, "just to make sure everything's in order." Sarah nodded, though her mind was racing. What kind of tests? Wasn't everything supposed to be fine? She wanted to ask more questions, but the doctor was already ushering the nurses out of the room, the twins in their arms. Michael, still riding the high of becoming a father, didn't seem to notice anything unusual. "They're just being thorough," he said, squeezing Sarah's hand. "It's all part of the process." Hours passed, and the twins were brought back to the room. Sarah held them close, studying their tiny faces. They looked so much alike, yet there was something different. She couldn't quite put her finger on it. Maybe it was just her nerves, her exhaustion playing tricks on her. But then the doctor returned, this time with a folder in his hand. His face was grim, and Sarah's stomach dropped. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low. Michael finally seemed to sense that something was wrong. He stood up, his protective instincts kicking in. "What's going on?" he asked, his tone firm. The doctor hesitated, glancing down at the folder in his hands. "We ran the DNA test," he began, his words measured. "And there's something you need to know." Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. What could a DNA test possibly reveal about two newborns? Were they sick? Was there some kind of genetic condition they hadn't known about? The doctor took a deep breath, as if bracing himself for what he was about to say. "The results, they're not what we expected." He paused, his eyes darting between Sarah and Michael. "The twins, they're not genetically related." Sarah felt like the room was spinning. Not genetically related? How was that even possible? They were twins, born at the same time, from the same mother. It didn't make any sense. Michael looked just as confused. "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice rising. "How can they not be related?" The doctor shook his head, clearly struggling to find the right words. "It's extremely rare, but it's possible for a woman to release two eggs during ovulation, and for those eggs to be fertilized by two different men. It's called heteropaternal superfecundation." Sarah's mind raced. Two different men? But that would mean… No, it couldn't be. She looked at Michael, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. "Are you saying…" he began, but the doctor cut him off. "I'm saying we need to investigate this further," he said, his tone urgent. "This kind of situation, it's unprecedented. We need to make sure there hasn't been some kind of mistake." Sarah felt a wave of nausea wash over her. A mistake? Or something else entirely? Her thoughts were a jumbled mess, but one thing was clear. Their perfect little family was suddenly anything but. The doctor excused himself again, leaving Sarah and Michael in stunned silence. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, and neither of them knew what to say. And then, the sirens. The sound grew louder, closer, until it was right outside the hospital. Sarah's heart raced as she clutched her babies tighter. What was happening? Why were the police here? Michael stepped toward the door, His jaw clenched. "I'm going to find out what's going on," he said, his voice steady but laced with anger. Sarah wanted to stop him, to tell him to stay, but the words caught in her throat. She was too overwhelmed, too scared to think straight. All she could do was hold her babies and pray that whatever was happening, they would all get through it together. But as the minutes ticked by, the questions only multiplied. Who were the fathers of these twins? How could this have happened? And why were the police involved? The answers were out there, somewhere, but for now, Sarah and Michael were left in the dark, clinging to the fragile hope that somehow, someway, everything would be okay. But deep down, they both knew nothing would ever be the same again.